Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crypto for Business. I'd like to talk about one of the biggest threats to business decision making. Now, this topic was initially going to be a part of my previous video where I debunked 7 crypto payment myths, but its sheer scope and relevance demanded a separate dedicated video. So, without further ado, let's dive in. There's a strange irony to ignorance. When someone truly knows nothing about a subject, they tend to be careful by saying things like, I don't know enough to weigh in, or I need someone more technical to walk me through this. That kind of ignorance is actually quite manageable because it leaves room for learning. The real danger starts when someone absorbs just a few fragments of information and decides they've just got it. At that point, you're more than just wrong, you're wrong with total confidence. When we feel certain, we stop searching for answers and no longer update our beliefs accordingly. This is the confidence trap, and it's precisely why so many people can easily pass a definitive judgment on crypto payments. In a space as fast-moving as fintech, acting as if you're the expert while having a wrong understanding is a recipe for being left behind. In order to understand this problem, we must define the Dunning-Kruger effect. This is the proven phenomenon which shows that the less you know about something, the more confident you are that you understand it. The reason is that when we have limited knowledge in a specific area, we also lack the ability to judge the limits of our own competence. To be blunt, not having expertise doesn't just make you bad at something, it makes you too bad to recognize that you're bad at it in the first place. This explains a well-known paradox. It is often the people with the lowest levels of proficiency that tend to drastically overestimate their own competence, while the true experts underestimate theirs. One side is ignorant of its own ignorance, while the other possesses clear awareness of just how complex their field really is. Another major pitfall in business is assuming that recognizing a topic is the same as understanding it. You might recognize the word fintech, but that doesn't mean you understand clearing or acquiring. Recognition is passive. It reacts to a label. It's quick and intuitive. Understanding, on the other hand, is active. It studies the mechanism. It's slow and deliberate. Far too many business decisions are made at the level of recognition, but they're defended as if they were made at the level of understanding. Surprisingly, this trap is most dangerous to smart people and high achievers, individuals with deep knowledge in other fields, such as executives, founders, investors, or consultants, to name a few. When you're highly competent in, say, traditional banking or e-commerce, it's easy to let that expertise bleed into unrelated domains. Your brain convinces you that because you understand adjacent things, then you must inherently understand this thing too. Crypto payments are the perfect example because they sound deceptively simple. Few people consider how many layers of complexity are beneath those words, from compliance and custody to settlement, banking relationships, and tax reporting. When all of those layers are flattened into one vague concept, then reaching a confident opinion is easy, but reaching an accurate one is much harder. On top of that, most businesses never actually interact with the raw blockchain, but with a provider. However, instead of evaluating the provider's specific model, they evaluate the term crypto. They confuse their initial reaction to a label with a well-reasoned business judgment. The conversation should be about what that specific provider can do for your business, not whether crypto is good or bad. A useful way of thinking about this is by dividing it in 3 stages. First, there is the label, where we react to surface-level triggers like risky and complex. This is where weak arguments thrive. Second, there is the mechanism, where we focus on things like the allocation of responsibility or the movement of money. This is where professional decisions are made. And finally, we have the consequence, where we review if the solution actually creates meaningful value or solves a genuine friction point. Everyone should go through stages 2 and 3, but when discussing crypto payments, most people never move past the first stage. Crypto payment processors often have the same blind spot, just in the opposite direction. They understand the technical terms, so they assume that a merchant's hesitation must be due to ignorance. This is the curse of knowledge in action. It's a cognitive bias which shows the difficulty of imagining what it's like for someone else not to know something that you already know. Terms like off-ramp and on-chain settlement are routine for all processors. For merchants, however, they are red flags that necessitate a call to the legal department. When a provider calls their product simple, they might be technically right, but they are commercially tone deaf. They are not accounting for the industry-specific friction a merchant has to face in order to get a project approved. They miss that adoption is also a massive trust and communication issue in addition to being a technical hurdle. This is why many providers can have a perfectly functioning product and still fail. Merchants don't just care whether it works. They'll ask questions like, will this confuse my finance team? Will this trigger a board audit? Will my bank get nervous? When a provider dismisses these concerns as irrational, they fail to bridge the gap between their technical solution and the merchant's professional reality. Here's some advice on how to avoid these mistakes. For merchants, ensure that your confidence is proportional to your understanding. You can be cautious and right, or confident and wrong. Before you adopt or reject a new technology, try a brief audit. Can you explain the system without relying on big buzzwords? Can you point to the specific component that will create the risk you're so worried about? Can you define the threshold that would change your mind? If you can't answer any of these, then your current opinion simply doesn't count as an informed final judgment. If you're going to say yes or no, you should be able to explain why, based on the mechanics and business case, not on whether the idea felt foreign or risky to you. The audit is just as necessary for processors and providers alike. Can you sell the business value without falling back on technical jargon? Can you explain the merchant's responsibilities or lack thereof in a language that a CFO would understand? Are you really reducing friction or just explaining why that friction shouldn't exist? Stop selling the tech and start addressing the psychological and organizational barriers of the business you're speaking to. To bring it all back together, we can see the confidence trap taking place at different levels. Some people reject crypto far too quickly with zero justification, while others promote it with a blind and almost missionary zeal, acting as if every business has the same risk appetite and readiness. The critic is overconfident about the category, while the advocate is overconfident that the value is self-evident. Both are missing the most important point, which is the calibrated analysis of the business layer. You will never reach a serious conclusion by being a cheerleader or a hater. Crypto can be a strategic win for some, an unnecessary distraction for another, and a long-term play for a third. So, next time the subject of crypto payments comes up, pause. Whether you're a supporter or a skeptic, check your premise and verify that your stance isn't just a reflection of your own past experiences or ignorance. I kindly ask you not to assume that I'm trying to force a specific outcome. My goal is to ensure that the conversation stops being a childish clash of egos and starts being a real negotiation that can result in meaningful progress for both parties. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.